anything?
How was the post-class school?
Small class.
A little more subdued than something off walls, but
Yeah, no, it's exactly. I think maybe 3 day weekend, the state by candy floating around.
And then they had like half days, they had fall break, then they had, I don't remember, a holiday, and then they had half days, and it's just crazy.
I'm glad that everybody is expressing that their kids have lost their minds, but not just my class.
My kid in kindergarten had his name on board 6 times on Friday. You know, I mean, once is normal.
I was gonna say, how many times does it usually happen?
Maybe twice.
6 times from the beginning?
Because he can't stop talking to you. Can you imagine that?
No, I can't. Wow.
Normally he, you know, chills for a while. He's got all the kids, everybody had their name on the board. Everybody.
That is the 6.
6 times. Yes, where's the trouble? 6 times, it's not acceptable.
I have to say, I hope you did this for Sundays. Every other time you've done TV shows, something has happened and we never finish the series.
Oh.
So I'm hoping that this one works.
Okay, yeah, me too.
Because there've been several that I've started
Right.
and then
Was there no church this morning? There was.
Yeah, I didn't
There
know.
was.
because the parking lot was
Parking empty.
It's like they
It was like early caucus.
usually there's a whole bunch.
Yeah. I don't know, I didn't, the thing today.
And then, yeah, I didn't even see the rabbis.
He doesn't have
John
a spot
Parker is
anymore.
actually, it's first.
No, we parked on the, like, by the religious school.
Okay. I don't know if you heard it on. Before I had my
Yeah.
car parked.
Yeah.
And it-
What happened? Can you do it?
Yeah, some kid didn't execute. Crashed in the back door. They had 600 miles.
Oh, did he stop?
He did. Joe Morgan came flying in. He goes, I know it's gotta be either you or Mark.
Another
Two
chance.
picks, and it was like, yeah, I'm flying. Why?
I've
Just
only
somebody just hit
gotten
your
about
car.
15 this.
$6,000 of damage.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Because company is paying.
All but about $700.
You know, you can go to some.
If you respond.
Yes, we're trying to do something because I,
Yeah.
You're on their
It takes a while, but your company, you don't do.
no,
your
I'm gonna,
company
yeah.
Goes to them to subrogation court. And then you get the money.
Thank you for telling me. We knew there was some process. I just.
You may just want to remind your company of subrogation.
Yeah, if you go to like AAA. They go up.
Well, we did report it to our USAA.
Oh, yeah.
And it was his aggressive, you know, stuff. I mean, the car was literally like, I'm gonna be my friend. Thank you.
Takes a while, she's working several months.
Make sure you're assist.
This whole thing is taking forever. Yeah.
They sue them.
We're on.
Shalom, welcome to Who Knew? An exploration of the Jewish experience. Sponsored by Jewish Nevada. We want to thank Tova McGilvray, our president, our Temple Sinai Board of Directors, Michael Gordon, our VP, and Chair of Buildings and Grounds for all the logistics and for streaming it today. And we want to thank Rabbi Benjamin Zober for being our sheriff in town. So today we're going to saddle up and start part 1 of our 4-part series of Jews of the Old West. So I turn it over to our sheriff, Rabbi Benjamin Zober.
All right. If you want to turn that off and then hang on to that. Thank you. All right. So yeah, I'm going to go on this side so the camera can catch the images behind me. We're going to be looking at, we have 4 weeks. I've got 4 really great shows that give us some idea of the Jews in the Old West, or at least how the people in Hollywood thought Jews in the Old West worked. but I thought it would be good to do a little bit of background on some of the way Jews were in the Old West and some interesting characters. A few of them could have a course of their own because they are just crazy fascinating and all sorts of turns. But I just wanted to kind of give a little background, and I may do a little bit kind of before each session, just to kind of give us a little bit of context and a little, some historically accurate information. Not that our television shows aren't basically documentaries. So question we always have is, who's the first Jew blank? I think part of the problem with this one is how do we find the West? Because at one point, the Midwest was the West for this country. As we're reading through some of the things, and they're talking about Jews coming to Ohio. Well, okay, Abraham Jonas, sure, but I don't think that's what we out here are thinking of as the West. So realistically, West at one point, basically the western half of the continent was New Mexico. And so that's where we encounter probably the first Jew who ventured that far west, which is this Don Luis de Carvajal. He was a new Christian of Jewish descent, whatever that means. He may not have actually known that he was Jewish until kind of later in life, but managed to kind of ingratiate himself to some politically powerful people and ended up being a governor of this region. Someone said that he was the most enlightened and humane of the conquistadors, which is, I guess, a compliment. But eventually things went south for him and his family, as we can see from these pictures, that there were charges of essentially spreading Judaism. That likely, if he wasn't necessarily doing it himself, but a number of people that he brought over or that were working with him were probably Jews or crypto-Jews. And the secret kind of got out, and there was a Mexican Inquisition, and hangings and other sorts of executions happened, and things unraveled pretty quickly for many or most of them. Some of them then did disperse throughout the region, and some of the Jewish, we start to see some of the Jewish kind of migration spreading through what eventually becomes the United States. An interesting fellow that I came across was this Don Bernardo Lopez de Mendizábal. He's one of the ones I'd love to learn more about and do a whole thing on, because the description from the book Pioneer Jews was that his story was a rough map through a labyrinth of slander, bribery, embezzlement, fornication, and Indian exploitation, all of which were endemic to the unstable northern frontier in that period. He seems like our kind of people. The building pictured is this was the Hall of Inquisition in Mexico City. This is not Don Bernardo and his bride. I couldn't find any good pictures. I found one picture that was maybe him, but wasn't labeled. There were two people featured in the article. One of them was maybe drawn. This is an AI rendering. Usually AI renderings are really, really terrible of people, but I think they did. He is, at least from this, he is a good-looking guy. So I'll take it. And they cut off the fingers, so we can't see that they gave them extra fingers. But just all sorts of intrigue and things going on with him and his folks. So some of the Mexican territory includes what is now Texas. So a lot of the early stuff was going on in that sort of area. And as we know from our deep recesses of American history, Texas and its revolutions, there were six different. The reason Six Flags, the amusement park, is called Six Flags is because there have been 6 different flags of Texas. So we see some of this. So that was sort of one of the first areas where we start to see Jews, including a fellow by the name of Samuel Isaacs, who was on the sort of Texan Mayflower list of the first people coming into Texas. And there were a lot of different sorts of folks coming into Texas. And I'm happy to report that people were not singling out Jews as Jews. We were in with everybody else. We were gringos. So we'd made that sort of status that we were foreigners, invaders in the area, just like everybody else, just like the Christians we'd always wanted to be with. But during this period in the 1820 and for the next 20, 25 years, we see a lot of Jews coming into Texas, New Mexico, and California. So one the question then, what are all these Jews doing? And yes, merchants was a big one. We see this statistic that in Prussia, 85% of the Jews were merchants or peddlers, and they bring those skills over. The hope was, if you're in this business, you start on your back. You start carrying it with a satchel or a pack of goods. If you get successful enough, you can buy a horse or a donkey. And if you get really successful, then you can get a cart to pull these things. And the dream of all dreams is that eventually you get a store. A lot of the set commerce is happening in places like San Francisco. That was a major center where a lot of people coming in and Jews, and Jews are getting to be recognizable there, as are all of the other immigrants, all of which are seen with a fair amount of xenophobia and prejudice. They talk about the Jewish swindler, which was something that had started in Europe and along with the trades comes over and sees that. But realistically, people are very busy living a hard scrabble life, and anti-Semitism is not, it's there as an undercurrent, but it's not a daily threat to people. So that's sort of, for a lot of people, the way life's going. Merchant is the kind of one of the main professions, but if you're not good at that, fortunately, we have mining to go into, which is going to be growing, as we know, as we start discovering gold and silver throughout the western part of the United States. A little more on life and anti-Semitism. As I said, it wasn't this systematic, targeted sort of thing that we sort of have come to unfortunately know or recognize. It was more just you would encounter someone who might be an anti-Semite. It didn't mean that the community as a whole would harbor those prejudices or anything like that. So I think it was a little easier for Jews to be Jews in that way, and in a lot of ways they were recognizable in dress and practice. Some of the sort of, if there was some systematic institutional stuff, you had Sunday trading laws, where a community would say that you can't do commerce on Sunday, which is not a problem unless you take off Saturday as a day of rest, because then you're missing a major day of commerce. And invariably, these were anti-Semitic laws. That generally, because if you're a Christian and you don't want to do business on Sunday, you just won't do business on Sunday. These happen from time to time in various places. But not overwhelmingly problematic. And a lot of Jewish merchants just recognize the reality that they need to work on a Sunday, which then worked as kind of a counter argument that people would be complaining about the Jews. And there were many examples say, well, here are 10 people in our community. They're Jewish. They all do business on Sunday. I don't know why you're making a deal of this. The other area was there were credit companies. Dunn and Company, which eventually became Dunn and Bradstreet, had sort of classifications of Jews. There were sort of like white Jews were at the top and they were okay, and the other were Israelites and Hebrews, and would often give them poor credit ratings to keep them from getting businesses, which meant that what people had to do was they had to reach out to family or friends or other people from the same part of the world that they came from, to use them for financing and other sort of relief. But Jews really were in every aspect of the economy: banking, agriculture, ranching, building roads and rails, real estate, whatever kind of was needed. If they saw an opportunity, they could go to that. But really banking, owning land and livestock were kind of the big ones that we saw. So let's just jump real quick back to Nevada, because that's why we're here. The first Jew in Nevada is believed to be a guy named Isaac Kahn. Came here about 1850, settled in Dayton, had a store. Not a whole lot more is necessarily known about him. There was a large Mormon population. They rushed out. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But Carson City, a fellow by the name of Abraham Curry, was looking to buy some property, and it was way too expensive. And he said, well, I'll start my own city, which he did. And he named it Carson City. He is one of the founders of that city. And then, yes, before long, people, yes. It's named for Kit Carson, but not, yeah. Kit did not. Abraham did. Abraham Curry called it Carson City after all the Carson things are named for Kit Carson. And so I think it was, and it must have moved with the Carson, the river, I think, and he said, let's do Carson City. But we are also seeing, okay, so there we go. Yeah, so he lives on. That's excellent. Yeah. Sadly, no. All right, so but we start finding little veins and pockets of ore in through the Washoe Valley, which is of course going to bring us to the Comstock, because you can't mention this stuff without talking about the Comstock lode. I don't want to belabor too much of it. It was incredible boom and bust, but there were some interesting Jewish characters from that. Adolf Sutro, the Sutro Tunnel. He was also the wonderfully bearded gentleman in the left-hand corner. Was an innovator and helped build this tunnel. Unfortunately, the tunnel was kind of built too late, but the reputation lives on, and he did some other things and did pretty well for himself. Sam and Bertha Flax, this is a couple. So Sam was smitten with Bertha in Russia, and I guess followed them to the United States or met them. And then her family said, we need to go out west. And he said, I want to go out west, still trying to impress young Bertha. And he only spoke Yiddish and was trying to he was staying with someone. And the guy said, well, if you want to make money in this town, you got to go into mining. And he points over to a pile of rocks, and he starts going and looking around and discovers that when you're a miner, you go thousands of feet underground. And he said, no, thank you. So he took a job as an assistant bartender, which was it was definitely arguably safer than being in a mine, but it was a terrible, terrible job, in part because he made next to nothing doing it. But he stuck with it, and he learned English, and he eventually decided that he wanted to go into a different industry, and his boss didn't want to lose him. So his boss gets a guy to come up and tell him that he had just survived an explosion in the ore, sort of the area this guy wanted to go in. This guy comes in all bandaged. He goes, "Oh, I just survived an explosion. I'm like an ore manager." And the guy went, "Okay, you know what? I'll stay working here. I would rather do that than get blown up." Didn't know that the whole thing was sort of a scam from his boss to keep him working there. But eventually, he did manage to impress Bertha, and this is their wedding photo. So a happy ending for the Flaxes there. A little more about Nevada. Varied in its Judaism. Jacob Rader Marcus, the dean of American Jewish history, said there were almost as many Judaisms as there were individuals. You have people coming from all sorts of other different countries and communities, and they bring with them their traditions. And so you might be, you see all of these different things coming together, and it's not really a space. There's not a set community where people are going to be able to come together and say, let's do it this way, let's do it that way, or they would try to, and they would argue over this is the one way to do it. No, this is, in addition, also languages. Different languages are providing a barrier, so people tended to be more about their family or people they knew from their country for their community rather than the broader, even within a town, if there are other Jewish families, you might not be as close with them because of the language or the culture. The other thing we run into is that there's religious freedom. And for a lot of people that meant, I can not be Jewish anymore. And same for other religions, but Some said, I'm out of here. I'm done. I just want to be American or generic or Christian. The last character I want to talk about is this guy, Jacob Klein. He was a carpenter and a brewer, and we'll get to the convert in a moment. He was a better brewer than a carpenter because he helped a friend build the brewery, which then fell down. Presumably, they rebuilt it. He eventually converted, which was sort of essentially a secret. There were still Jewish periodicals and things referring to him as Jewish well after his conversion. So either they didn't know or they didn't want to admit it. But what he did do was he opened up the second floor of his brewery, I'm assuming a second one that was better built and not the one that fell apart, and opened it up to the Jewish community that they used for social events and for the high holidays. So.
Probably the Brewery Arts Center, now the Brewery Arts Center is across the street from my house.
Oh, could be.
And so there's
Yeah.
a lovely mural of all the brewers.
Yeah, well, okay.
Like, yeah, the King Street side. I'm on the
Yeah.
the second street side. In the mural. I don't know if he's in the mural.
I don't, yeah, we'll have to try and find out because that would, yeah, that would be an interesting, you never knew you were right there by an important piece of Nevada Jewish history. Okay, so are there any questions on that? Hopefully just kind of whet your appetite for giving us our situation. Yeah. Klein he married a I think it was one of his business partners' sisters or daughters or somebody, and converted to Christianity, and the community kind of bit their nails in terror. And as I said, they didn't really publicize it, and there were still Jewish newspapers that were talking about him as a member of the community well after he had left. So today we're going to watch an episode of a television show. This is not the first Jewish Western that I could find. There was an episode of I think like a Philco TV Playhouse or something that had to do with Jews on the frontier. But in terms of sort of the more episodic ones, the first show where we see a Jewish themed episode is Have Gun Will Travel. If you are not familiar with this one is about a gun for hire named Paladin. Paladin is he is an educated West Point graduate, ex Union soldier who goes around doing good for people and dispensing wisdom and kindness and generosity, along with the occasional fist fight or gunfight. There are definitely parts of the show that have not stood the test of time. Some of the characters and portrayal of Asian immigrants in particular, but it's a significant one in the history both of the television Western and television history. There are 2 episodes of the show that I have found that have Jewish content. We're going to watch the second one. The first one is actually kind of builds to this one. In the first one, he's approached by a young woman, Rivka Shatnez. Her father has witnessed a murder and the question is, will he testify against the guy? Because if he testifies against the guy, he will probably get killed. And he has certain values and wants to live by them, and she wants her father to stay alive. So she hires Paladin to come and protect him. And I was back and forth about which one to show. It's interesting. At times Paladin dispenses Jewish wisdom and says, "Oh, you sir are not you are like Jacob and not Esau. You're not a man of war." He references the Talmud and the Zohar and all of these sorts of things. So we have met these characters before, and we're going to encounter them again in this episode. So yes. Yes. Yeah. And the Zohar. He's like, doesn't your holy Zohar say blah, 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 blah. So, yeah. Undoubtedly there are some Jews in there writing some things. Yeah. The director of this episode, I'll just mention, is Richard Donner. who went on to direct things like Superman and Lethal Weapon and all of those. This is one of his earlier credits. So for those of you who are online, Michael should be giving you a link to the website. It's on Pluto TV. The name of the episode is A Drop of Blood, if you have to look for it another way. You should be able to just go to the website and watch the video. You shouldn't have to sign up. There may be a thing that says sign up, which I think you can just say I'll do later or no thanks. If you do have to sign up, it's free. So if they're asking for credit cards, don't give them any money. You don't need to. There are commercial breaks. Otherwise, it's like we're stealing TV. So we'll just have to deal with them. They're probably all going to be political ads because that's just the age we live in. So we're gonna watch here. We're gonna give you guys some time. We're gonna try to take a few extra minutes after here. May have a little bathroom break just so we can let everyone online catch up in case they needed a few minutes to kind of get going. So without further ado, here is Have Gun Will Travel. That's not right. That's the wrong tempo. Hang on.
Do you expect a tip for message not delivered?
All right, hey boy, let's have it.
Oh, almost forgot. Oh, dear.
Hey boy,
Yes.
that's for the messenger. You better run if you're gonna catch him. With the aid of the Lord, the 12th day of Tammuz in the year 639, from the creation of the world, to the beloved Mr. Paladin, deacon of the learning, defender of the orphan, lover of peace, and hired killer. May his light shine for 120 years. In the first place, may I say that I am well, praise be the Almighty. With the aid of the Lord, the message will follow very shortly. Sharpness is a man who loves to proper style.
What thing?
You remember Richter?
Oh, the pretty little girl that sat down with us here and wouldn't have anything to eat but a drink of water?
That's right. The rich guy is going to be married this Sunday. And since the bridegroom has no family, he can shop this wife just now.
Who ought to be going to eat?
But I mean, right now, I'm just thinking, I'm speaking. Way to greet a friend. Excuse me. My eyes are so bad. I can't get a guess from a rustler. You carrying a gun all my time. Ready? What way? I thought you were that Lola, Billy Buckstone. You remember him? Buckstone? I thought your testimony got Billy Buckstone on 6 months ago. Oh, yes. The judge was an honest man. He sentenced him. But the higher judge, that don't mean the Almighty. He let Billy go free for insufficient evidence. $5,000 cash. Set another wedding. Billy Buxton invited himself to the ceremony. He discussed why given him, he can worry him to death. Hey, I'm sure your neighbors are not going to allow Billy Buxton to come in here and wreck your celebration. 6 months ago, you were the hero of this whole county. So what does that make me a saint in a photo? Nathan, have you asked your neighbors to help you? Mr. Faraday, you know this country better than I do. When an outlaw goes free, does every man in town step on his gun and go chasing? What does he say? It isn't my gun that's stolen. It isn't my brother that was killed. Of course not. I stretch where it doesn't reach. A peasant is a peasant, the world over. That's why there'll be no wedding. Not here. I'm sending them to San Francisco to get married. And you? Mister, it took me 2 years to build this house. My own hands, with my own sweat. I was to go away from here for 1 day. Go back and probably to 5 hours. Too old a man, start over again. Nathan and I know your daughter Ruth. I have a great picture of her going off to San Francisco or any place else and getting married without she did. Well, the children know. Victor says, here's my home, why can't I be married where I belong? Hey, children, you say something is blue, they say it's blue. About the bridegroom. The young man is sitting up there. Cold, fool. Anything that he wants is all right with him. Find way to stop a marriage. An excellent way to do it. So now you're such an expert. Where are they? I'd like to get this gold. I will allow the rest of the gold. A golden character. But how's he going to survive in a place like this? I mean, you can't slaughter a chicken, can't control a woman. So long. 3 hours down in my wagon. Anything shot as you know as well as I do. A rifle is a very dangerous piece of equipment that you don't even use. I'm worried about my daughter and he is in philosophy. Now in the kitchen we have a glass of tea. Does it? Oh, sir, I will not drink for the man who's worried about the time. People walk on me. See what they are.
All motions are, but this one, we can't keep this one out.
Just laugh at your
And return to meetings of all the criminal courts called in Summer. Early voting is now open.
A little late for that. So you're trying to vote early. That was money well spent on that. It's a
This is for nothing. And the next time will be for grabbing off the juiciest gal they got it. And the time after that, well, that'll be for making you wish that you was back where you come from. Now you start eating. Now you boys all seen how I did it in the evening, Jen. Pie. I ain't got all day. I might have me a young widow woman that's who can sew.
How much stone you want to start over? Beginning.
You remember that fellow I tell you about? Kennedy?
I ain't killer.
That is very decent fellow.
Mazel tov, you got yourself a fine girl, and I am not a hired killer. First, the Midrash says, anyone may slaughter animals. And then once, in the same breath, it makes it anyone except the dead, the idiot, and the child. Why disqualify the dead and not the blind? Eat your soup. The law won't get cold. You actually killed people with that? Why? How did you feel afterwards? Very bad, of course. But that's the best thing. You can't do. No, it's never easy. That's easy.
Mr. Gordon, will you teach me? Why not?
I don't believe in a man that is finished in his neighbors and justify his existence, especially when this is something people. May I receive this? There's a larger grade of oil on the trigger assembly than on the canister. It's interesting. Very nice. But you are still going to San Francisco to get ready.
And leave you here alone? To wait for Billy Buckstone to come some night and burn you alive? Mr. Pellegrin, do you talk to him? He will not listen.
Nathan, if I may quote Philip. Go ahead. Those money. Our Kipro, Ninhatzibu. Exactly.
Do not separate yourself from the community.
It's just as stubborn as her mother, rest in peace. Worship, you better take a strong hand to her before she stands in around on your head. What can I do? I happen to agree with her. But it's all settled, we'll hold the wedding right here. The big Buckstone. No. It's very easy to put out a fire with the head of another man. I invited you here as a friend, not as a gunfighter. Billy Buckstone won't try to kill me in front of other witnesses. You tried to spoil the wedding, to destroy the property, to drive me away. Very well. If my neighbors will send them silence to see that.
It shouldn't be called.
Donald Trump intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations. When I am president, I will bring down the cost of groceries, and unlike Donald Trump, I will.
Give everybody.
Did you see Saturday Night Live last night?
No,
Oh my
I
God.
saw the recording.
Was Kamala there?
Yes,
I can't.
with the thing with Maya Rudolph that was absolutely hysterical.
I can see you.
They
I'll
opened
watch
it up
on
that
YouTube.
way. You go online and look
Yeah.
for it. It's really brilliant.
What's worth, if anybody has any questions on question 3, Doug Goodman would love to talk to. He wrote an op-ed in the RGJ, if you guys didn't see, he wrote an opinion piece in the RGJ about question 3.
That's all served next week.
Yeah.
Mark, we're not going to keep that thing handy. What? Bury a gun in the same thing like a wedding. Some guy with chance to throw the bucks on and try to get some of his own back. What? There's no bad blood between you and me. Well, you were pretty happy when Nathan's testimony sent him to jail. Yeah, but well, a man makes it bad, he should not have tried crying for help when it comes time to lie. You tired of bucks down? They'll come all together for my dad. A small bunch on high ground can dominate the whole company. Even the Tsar's army may have black here taken people is not much. Well, dominating positions not much use to cover line of retreat even at West Point. Can we start? I still have a dying man to visit tonight. Why not? You're expecting a disturbance, aren't you? And Nathan, remember, you're not on trial here. They are. No matter what happens at ceremony, there's not to be disturbed on. Don't call the witnesses. Witness. Perhaps you will take this off the back of the ceremony. Rabbi, you have a lot of faith. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Faith seems to come only when we have no other choice. I say that no choice is also a choice. You know, but Ed, if you gave up your unfortunate profession and you grew a beard, who knows what great things you might get achieved. Well, they also say that a head with no beard is better than a beard with no head. My daughter's rapidly becoming an old lady.
You got this from Dad. Come on out, Nathan, and join your party. Oh, come on, Billy. You and your friends go someplace else. You just say what? This is Nathan's fault. If he wants to ask us for leave, he can do it himself. Our Nathan? Blessed art thou, O Lord, ruler of the heavens, who hast sanctified it with thy commandment. Command that apple. Join your party. The ring. Once more shall it be heard in the cities of Judah and the courtyards of Jerusalem the voice of gladness and the voice of joy, the voice of bridegroom and bride. Oh, Sasan, oh, Simple, oh, Fasal, the God, Palo. And Nathan, if you don't come out, we're gonna burn you out. Nathan. With the aid of the Lord, on the 16th day of Tammuz, in the year 5639 from the creation of the world, the bridegroom, Bible, son of Yitzchak Moshe, made the following declaration to create the covenant. Touch up the house. I'll come Break the house. To honor and cherish thee and provide all that is necessary for thy due sustenance. He who changes liquor in public It's as though he had shed his blood. Are Nathan? Where would you? Set pride as blood is mature and forgive the affection and sincerity. But now, in our moment of joy, let us also commemorate the destruction of our holy faith. Mazel tov. Mazel
Who knew that talent into a grapevine?
Was, what was Zober?
There you go.
Who was Bible? Oh, I don't know, yeah, I didn't see Bible. No, I've seen that guy a lot.
Yeah.
Mike Kellen. Bible.
Bible Melodic.
All right, take a couple minutes for a bathroom break, whatever, make sure that we're in sync with the folks who are online, and then we'll pick it back up. Hilarious.
Go figure, right?
They got married. They got married. I really, I love that for you, the marriage, like, okay, they're married, like, that's not the ending, there's just so much more adventure to be.
The bad guys go
Well, right, but there could be another episode.
Well, yeah.
The show wasn't on that much longer than
So when Paladin was they were having dinner, you saw Shabbat candelabra, but then he shot the gun. So I'm assuming it was supposed to be Shabbos, but maybe not Shabbos.
Well,
Okay.
No, that's gonna bother me. If you pointed that out, it bothers me.
He's gonna talk about it.
You can talk about when Christopher Columbus was doing
no,
Yeah. I just heard that this week.
all I can say to that is that, well, two things. One, I hope not. There's some serious doubt about this. too much stock in it. But I do find it fascinating that this is a discussion that surfaced, I don't want to say the late 80s, early 90s. The cover of Time magazine was like, Columbus Jewish and all this, and we were very excited, like, oh yeah, Columbus is Jewish, and now we're like, you know what, no, here's the bad guy. That's not,
Well, but in context of the time, we're looking at it in 2024. I mean,
even in the context of the time, I think there was like, he got back to Spain, and they were like, he did what? Like, his brutality was not just like, it was not garden variety, like what everyone was doing. He was, in some ways, was above and beyond it.
but when he was jailed for something else. I don't remember why he was jailed, but he was jailed for something else.
Yeah, but in general, I don't know.
I don't know, it was a day off from school. I did it.
Yeah. Well, now we can
Teacher's brother.
I just have a timing question. Is this a show that y'all used to watch, or is this
Yeah.
from classic television?
No.
Everybody.
Yeah. And he was such a handsome.
Totally, it was funny because when Rabbi Ben was testing it earlier, and I'm just sitting back here, and I didn't know what he was showing. And I just started hearing music. And I said, that's Paladin.
Paladin. I always watch.
Man of the West. What is
Have
it?
fun, we'll travel in the car. That was the thing.
We'll travel, reach the.
There it is.
And with something in it, village land.
That's right.
It's 3 stations.
And he was so.
How are we doing?
Yeah.
We're good? All right. Oh, we got too many microphones. Okay. So yes, so Have Gun Will Travel premiered in 1957 and ran for I think 5 or 6 seasons. So that gives us sort of our sense of it. Yes, the writer of that episode, Shimon Wenzelberg, was born in Germany, fled the Nazis, and established himself eventually in Hollywood. And he actually had a reputation for one, that he was a mentor to many Orthodox Jews in the entertainment industry about, I think, navigating some of those paths, and that many of his scripts, many of the things he wrote, had favorable and often accurate portrayals of Jewish life. So that's sort of where we get that, and we can see there were some of the actors and other people involved in it were also Jewish. So that does give us some of the authenticity. So let's open it up to some questions. So you wonder about the candelabra. So now
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
When Paladin came for dinner, there was a Shabbat candelabra, but it wasn't mentioned that it was Shabbat. And then, of course, Fievel gets up and shoots a gun. So what's the dichotomy there?
That's a good question. So I caught the menorah, but not the I didn't see Shabbat candles. But
It was not in the know. It didn't have.
It was a 7 branch.
yeah, there was a 7-branch one. So
Something for Shabbat.
I don't think you would be using one of those for Shabbat. Well, to be honest, some of it is because they need ambiance and things to throw things in. But I think your question is exactly on for something that we see in this episode and in a lot of the episodes, which is old world, new world, tradition or not, right? That if we look at this broadly, so especially with Fievel, right? We get he's this thin, he's this pale, this bookish, a very archetype of a certain sort of character, seemingly at odds with the rough and tumble West. Whereas Nathan Shotness, who in the first episode is a little bit more, he makes this big deal. He doesn't want Paladin because he's convinced he's a killer, and yet there are certain elements or aspects that suggest assimilation or acculturation, or at the very least having to make peace with being in a place where you can't necessarily be Jewish the way you want, right? I mean, who has a beard and who doesn't have a beard. I think, and this is a very interesting sorts of thing. And so it does give us that question. I don't think it was their intention to have this guy, if it is Shabbat, have him, shooting a gun on Shabbat. But there a lot of the idea and that we see in this sort of thing is about old world values and what does it mean to hold on to them, and what dangers does it have, and what does it mean to give them up, which is something that we see broadly in American Jewish history, or honestly in Jewish history, as we've been in different places and forced to reconcile our history and our tradition with the realities of where we are. So I think whether intentional or not, we have this guy who all of a sudden picks up the gun and shoots it amazingly well, and has this knows about the oil, and they never explain that, which I find deeply disappointing. I was also hoping at the end that he would pick up a gun and he would just like gun everybody down, and it'd be like, oh, okay. But they never quite got there with that. Rabbi, I saw your hand.
Well, I just think it was really pleasantly surprising in a way that they didn't stick with the stereotype of Fievel that you might have thought they were gonna. Yeah. And of course Paladin then ends up, he's spouting all these wonderful Jewish values. And it was really pretty neat.
Yeah.
And surprisingly so. I don't remember any of these from whenever, but
right. But even in that, right, that I think the fact that he could have picked up his gun, shot all the guys, probably shot them dead, but employs this different means. Now, as you said earlier, there is this problem that the guys ran off. Like it didn't resolve the issue. I don't think they are. Well, we could speculate, right? Have the neighbors been convinced enough at this point that they will stand up and that they're not going to allow this sort of thing to happen again? Or if Billy Buckstone and his goons come back, are they going to terrorize them just the same? And it's going to be that sort of that selfishness that we saw at the beginning. I don't know. I also suspect there's some amount of just in terms of the writing. That to end that chapter, you'd either have to kill a bunch of people, which they didn't want to do, or you'd have to have some sort of law thing, which we tried the last time, and the guy bribed his way out of it. It also takes time, and they've sort of finished their episode and had run out of time for what they did. But perhaps again, also they may have thought we preserve these characters. And they didn't know how long the show would last. They didn't know they were coming to the end. They could bring them back for any number of times because we have a history. We have these characters. They don't have to go through a lot of exposition like, why does this character hate that character or fear this guy? They can just cart them out and they can use them again. So
as far as you know, they didn't keep the storyline going?
I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't watched all the episodes. I don't know that I don't think there are any more episodes with the Shotness family. Whether Billy Buckstone makes an appearance somewhere else, because why waste a good villain? That I don't know. Yeah, Tova, please.
So I have a question. It seemed that they put a real priority on not interrupting the marriage ceremony once it started. Is that an actual ritualistic thing? Not in my experience, or is that just sort of a metaphor for perseverance in this condensed episode?
I mean, I like that you've attached the metaphor to it. I think we can draw from that if we're trying to pull. I think it was just they created that as a plot device. It's not a ritual thing. I mean, I don't know. I haven't done that many weddings. None of them have been interrupted by gangs like that. Rabbi Myra, you've maybe done a few more. Have you had that? No, I think it was, I think they were trying to trying to say something, and it was more the paladins trying to provide this and maintain this sacred space in this moment, more than anything, and that it worked for the storyline, so they could have the heightened drama and all of that. So, do Do we have anyone online wondering anything or want anything that they're looking to add?
Michael, any questions online?
Okay.
Rabbi Ben, I have a question.
Yes, please.
At the beginning, before we started this, you mentioned one of the professions that Jews would have was livestock.
Yeah.
Did kashrut play into that at all in any way?
Yeah, I would imagine so. I think bless you again. I think most of it was they're farming for people or raising livestock for people other than themselves. So not necessarily an issue, but when they would go to slaughter the animals, there are probably not a lot of, certainly out in sparsely populated areas, there are not a lot of shulchats, there are not a lot of ritual slaughters available to do that sort of thing. So if it's something that somebody had knowledge of, or if they're going to be eating something themselves, it might be something they would attend to. But I think for the most part, it was just, this was something that they could make money doing. This is how they could support their family and would do that. But we're also probably, largely raising it and then selling it to other people. I don't know that, that they were slaughtering it themselves. So. I think, yeah, Mark.
Were there a bunch of circuit riding rabbis then? Because this rabbi's got to go visit someone who's dying, and
right,
he's in the middle of nowhere.
I would, yes.
I find that very interesting.
I would have to say the way too busy rabbi was probably the most realistic thing about this entire show. I'm not sure. I think there were rabbis. I don't know that it was necessarily established in terms of a circuit, but I think they would get pulled to different places if there was some sort of need.
Do we have an idea of a date?
Yeah, we do, because he said that, shoot, I should have written, he said the Hebrew date. It was 5760, 56, yeah, it was 56, yeah. It's post-Civil War, because Paladin is a Civil War veteran. So we're talking probably the late 1860s or 1870s. So, yeah. So. Well, and honestly, the sort of organizations and centralization of the rabbinate were not as established then. So you had much more, and you had people coming in who were rabbis from wherever. There's some of the famous rabbis in American history. They go back and speculate, was this person actually a rabbi? Like we have no record that they were ever ordained. They made a career of it. We don't know. But yeah, this, where this particular rabbi was from, probably from San Francisco, came out to do the thing, and wherever the next one was, who knows? Tova.
So Father Nathan wanted the kids to go to San Francisco and get married there. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm following. Like the pacing of the plot is like so different from what my little sugar riddled brain wants to do. So sometimes I'm like, did I understand everything correctly? And they didn't want, so theoretically they would have gone down to San Francisco and got married in a synagogue, but surrounded by a bunch of strangers.
Yeah.
But that was his solution to like not have the wedding be interrupted by the bandits. And that's what they were.
Yeah. And to keep the house safe, because if he wasn't worried about the house, he could have gone with them to San Francisco, but knew that if he left, they would burn the house down while he was gone. So yeah, so that was his he was willing to forego, I guess he was willing to forego being at his daughter's wedding to save his house. When you put it that way, it sounds kind of terrible. I think he expected that it would eventually be a house maybe that she would take over, and this would be their family homestead and plot for a long time. The ownership of property was a really significant thing to frontier Jews, because many of them had come from places in Europe where they could not own property. And so it was not only an attractive idea, but it was also something they recognized had great value in terms of stability for your family or money or other things like that. So they're perhaps there's a bit of a connection or an interest in preserving land in a way that seems a little bit strange to us, because we don't have that same sort of desperate or need, or I mean, as much as important as it is to own property and as much as we see on it, it's something we've just recognized that we can do in this country. So, all right. Yeah, I think that's sort of all I've got with it. I mean, there were
Preview what next week's gonna hold for us, or still figuring it out?
Sure. What I remember, what did I say we're doing next? Next week is Rawhide, right?
It won't be Have Gun Will Travel.
No, we're.
Is it Gunsmoke or Rawhide?
I think we're going to Rawhide next time. Yeah, Rawhide. Also, there are 2 episodes, I think, of Rawhide with Jewish themes. This one is way more interesting. Very, very different. One thing I sort of did want to mention was, and we touched on a little bit, one of the things that we see in a lot of the episodes. Sorry, I forgot I was still masked. A lot of there are a number of other shows that have Westerns that had Jewish content. And a couple of things we often see are the juxtaposition of Jewish values on the frontier and opposition or anti-Semitism. There's an episode of Bonanza where a peddler and his daughter. We have a lot of single parents in these Westerns. I'm not entirely sure why. And a fair number of ones were like old guys with pretty daughters. You can sort of imagine where that's going to go. But in this case, maybe. In the case of the Bonanza episode and some other ones, you have this merchant and his daughter are going, and they're confronted or accosted by some of the local troublemakers, and the wonderful and overly virtuous protagonists of the show come to their defense, and there's some amount of romance, there's some amount of what is this strange thing you're doing going on in there. And there was a little bit of that in the first episode of Have Gun Will Travel, of the Shotnesses trying to kind of maintain their values and all of that in the face of the bad guys and all of that. And I think that I didn't have an episode that was solely devoted to that. I think that's where I wanted to show Bonanza because it's right in our backyard, but it didn't really go beyond that. And I think we will definitely get some of that same sort of setup going on. Although again, it's as we saw, those things certainly happened, and there are a number of accounts of peddlers and merchants and other Jewish business people being attacked. But not necessarily because they were Jewish, but because it was a somewhat lawless and rough place. And there was violence and crime committed against people who had things of all sorts. And so, bad in all cases, but we don't necessarily need to say, it's because they were targeted because they were Jewish. So, yes, so we will be going to Rawhide next week. It is a very, very curious and interesting episode, and we will have, I'm hoping, lots to discuss with that. So yeah.
When is the seven-branched candelabra? When is traditionally the seven-branched candelabra used? I mean,
it is used in the temple. It's not. We don't have a fixed ritual use of that object anymore. It was something that came from. I mean, that when we talk about lighting in the Torah, there's references to it, how it's built and whatever, and it was used in the temple, and it is now essentially a symbol. We've as pointed out, we have one here. We have that are taken as kind of the symbol of our congregation, and so people have them, but there's no. Some people just have them and never light them because there's not a specific time or event that we will light them. We were gifted a few of them by some, I actually think anonymously, a few months ago. I came into my office one morning and Mike said, here are some of them. And I think I still have them because there's not, we don't really use them, but they will appear. I think we likely there's another episode we'll watch and we'll see one kind of like tucked away. And that's certainly something to watch. I always, when I watch these, I watch in the background for where's the Judaica. There was he had a picture of a rabbi and a Torah somewhere in his background and other little things like we'll eagle eyes, see if anyone sees any mezuzot in any of the shows that we watch, and other things. Yeah, same. I was looking for that. But that one, I think that's sort of where that's sort of maybe where we deduct a point or two, because had they had Shabbat candles, we'd be like, oh yes, and it would have been Shabbat and it would have cleared that whole thing up. But instead it was just, I think they were like, well, we've got someone said we've got this. And then someone said, well, you can't just have this weird thing. It gets a candle holder. Shouldn't we have candles? And either they said, well, we don't really do that. Or someone just went and did it. And then they went, okay, it looks good. We've got it. It's an image. Marilyn, please.
Was there any significance to the frog?
I mean, I think it's just making trouble. A frog. They're readily available, I guess. I mean, like, if you're willing to mess with someone, like, frogs are a good way to go. It worked in The Sound of Music. It works here. It worked in the Bible. You have to have more or a bigger frog, depending on your reading of that, if you want to really create a plague. I think it was, they were just trying to mess with her. I was a little surprised that she was so skittish, because she's tougher than that let on. But I think they were just
maybe slimy bras are her thing.
Maybe, yeah. Everyone has a limit. Yeah. My neighbor yesterday was admitting that he can't do ants. So frogs. Well, sure. I'm not generally part of most Jewish festivals, although the Treifa banquet I do believe had frogs' legs. But other than that, yeah. So.
Well,
right. Thank you.
Next 3 Sundays, we'll be continuing the same program. And obviously Rawhide, and then there'll be 2 different ones for the next 2. So we'll be here through November with that. December will be dark. January 26th, Rabbi Ben will be doing I Met You with Sinai with our very own Michael Gordon. And it'll be in connection with International Holocaust Remembrance Day. February 16th, Rabbi Sarah Zober will be doing Jewish love songs for the month of Valentine's Day. And then March 2nd, Rabbi Ben will be meeting Barbara Weinberg here. I Met You at Sinai. And then that'll be followed in April with Daryl Dworkin, who'll be giving a history of Jews in the toy industry when he meets Rabbi Ben at Sinai. So that'll be on Sundays from 1 to 3, just as we are now. If you go to the synagogue website, sinaireno.org/who knew, you can register for any of them. If you found this as interesting as I have been, this is our 3rd session now, tell friends, because we're growing and word is catching on that we are exploring all different avenues of our Jewish experience. So when we're done today, there's going to be some light refreshments in the lobby. And was there anything else? Oh, don't forget to vote. Anything else?
Vote already.
Well, that's
Thank you.